Carrie Weinheimer and Detective Michael Everett. The purpose of today's news conference is to provide an update on the investigation into the JonBenet Ramsey homicide and to put to rest some of the speculation that has occurred. As you know, the investigative team was restructured approximately 9 weeks ago and is now operating out of the Boulder Police Department under my direction. Two of my objectives are to keep the team focused and to move the case forward to a point at which a decision can be made. And I'm very pleased with the progress we have made in meeting those objectives. During these past 9 weeks, we have taken the time necessary to review the information and evidence that has been gathered to date. A review of the case was necessary for 2 reasons. One, to provide me with the opportunity to become familiar with the facts of the case. And 2, to have an understanding of what still needed to be accomplished and to know where to go from here. It became clear that even with the enormous amount of work that had been done, additional work was still ahead. Several other important things have occurred. First, we have reviewed and updated a case management task list to identify and assign tasks that need to be completed as part of this investigation. That task list currently consists of 72 items. Of those 72 items, 28 have already been completed, and about a dozen or so others are in the process of being completed. Of the remaining task list items, some are in process, and others are yet to be started. It is important to understand that this list is an evolving list, which can grow as additional information is received. Remember, investigation often leads to additional investigation. With the complexities involved in this case and the number of people that have been interviewed, it is easy to understand how time-consuming an investigation of this nature can be. Some examples of the tasks that we have recently completed include the re-interviewing of some significant witnesses, additional consultation with forensic experts. We have now reviewed close to 200 videotapes that were taken from the Ramsey home. We have also completed a review of the computer files taken from the Ramsey home. We have completed a review of all trace evidence gathered in this case and have identified some additional testing that still needs to be completed. We are in the process of getting this testing completed. However, most of this work must be completed by outside agencies. When this occurs, it takes time to get results back, sometimes weeks or even months. We continue to review all information and tips that are received. Now, some examples of tasks yet to be completed include the following: the re-interviewing of other identified significant witnesses and neighbors, the collection and analysis of additional evidentiary items, the completion of all forensic analysis. One of the most important tasks yet to do is the re-interviewing of some family members, specifically Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey and their son, Burke Ramsey. We have made a formal request for these interviews and do expect this to be completed in the near future. We are confident that once all our identified tasks are completed, we will be in a position to make a decision as to the next step in this case. And there are several options. One, we could seek an arrest warrant and a prosecution. We could ask for a grand jury investigation. Or we could inactivate the case until such time that additional information becomes available. What direction we take will depend on the facts of the case as they are developed and on the level of cooperation we receive from witnesses. While I cannot give you an estimate of how long it will be until we reach a decision point, I can tell you that we are going to be focused and aggressive in moving this investigation forward. Regardless of what has happened in the past, we are only looking forward with the goal of solving this case. Our investigative team is dedicated, committed, and positive in their approach. And I've been very impressed with the work they have done and continue to do, and I also greatly appreciate their dedication. I I would also like to take this time to say that since my assignment to this investigation, the relationship with the District Attorney's Office has been positive and professional. I have had regular contact and conversation with Pete Hofstrom. They continue to provide counsel and advice in this investigation that has been very helpful. I have been impressed with the commitment and dedication of the District Attorney's Office and do appreciate the help they have provided. Now, let me also say, we have not yet submitted a case for prosecution, nor have we prepared an arrest warrant. This investigation is still ongoing, and we are still making progress. I'll now take the time to answer some questions as they relate to my comments.
Commander Becker.
Yes, sir.
Are the Ramseys still a focus of this investigation, or have they been elevated to the status of suspects?
Well, as you know, we have not named suspects in this case, and we're going to continue to maintain that. What I will say is, we have an umbrella of suspicion, and people have come and gone under that umbrella. They do remain under an umbrella of suspicion, but we're not ready to name any suspects.
Including the son, sir? Bert?
At this time, we're treating him as a witness.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
Mayor Beckner, can you tell us specifically why it's important to re-interview John and Patsy Ramsey, and what kind of progress you're making on actually getting them to agree to a second interview?
Well, as you know, and as I stated in the statement, we have part of the progress we've made is we've interviewed other significant witnesses as well. So it's not unusual to call people back and have them re-interviewed, especially in a case that's this complex. Also understand it's been approximately 6 months since we last interviewed the Ramseys. During that time, there's been a lot of investigation. We've uncovered a lot of new information. We have a lot of new questions, and they can help us answer those questions. They are significant in this case, and they have information that's important to us.
How about the second part of that? What kind of progress are you making on getting them to sit down again?
Well, we made our formal request last week and have not heard back from them, but they have indicated every willingness to cooperate and have done so during my 9 weeks anyways, and so I expect that we'll get that done in the near future.
Kevin?
Mark, can you say at all how many other people have been crossed off your list of potential suspects, etc.?
No, I don't have that number. It's, that list changes sometimes from week to week as information becomes available and we look at different things. So, no, I don't have a number.
Bill?
Mark, can you give us an estimate of how many people are under this umbrella of suspicion, ballpark figure?
No, those are details that I really don't want to get into, and part of that is because it's constantly changing. And if I told you a figure today, that might be different next week, and so I don't want to get into that.
Commander Becker, do you believe this case will be solved?
I'm confident that it will be solved, yes. Well, if I start giving estimates of periods of time and then it doesn't work out that way, then, it looks like, we're not making progress. Let me assure you that we are making progress, we're moving forward, and let me leave it at that.
Commander, there are some inherent problems with any evidence when it's a year old and witnesses when they're a year old. Does that concern you at all, as positive as you are about this, that so much time has passed, even when you talk about collecting physical evidence?
Yeah, that's always a concern, certainly, but there's not a lot we can do about that. We're going to do the best we can, and I think there's still things that can be done. There's still information out there that can be gathered, and we're going to get it. I'm confident of that.
Commander, in terms of a possible interview with the Ramseys, would you guys be willing to go through some of the same conditions in that negotiating process that you went through last time, or will that be handled differently if it occurs?
I'm not prepared to discuss how we would handle those interviews.
Steve?
Yes, Commander, it was reported recently that the department consulted a not expert from the Canadian Mounted Police. Can you tell us anything about that? Why did you turn to Canada? What could a not expert tell you? Did you learn anything?
Well, as I said in a statement, we've consulted many experts, forensic experts around the country. We've taken the position and will remain so that we aren't going to identify specific experts that we've talked to.
You talked about specific new evidence and new testing of that evidence. Now, in just the past 6 months, there have been new advances in DNA testing. Are you going to retest any of the material you've found, or has it been destroyed in the testing that you've done already?
Well, I don't want to get into details about specific pieces of forensic evidence. What I will tell you is we do have other tests that we're going to do on some of the evidence, but I'm not going to tell you what evidence that is and what tests those are going to be. But we do have...
Doing those new advances, though?
Pardon me?
Would you be using some of the new advances?
Well, if I told you that, I'd be giving you the answer.
Commander, this is the first time we've seen the entire investigative team, to my knowledge, in this case.
Sure.
What has prompted this new openness after a year of saying very, very little to the public about this case? And is it fair to say that based on this news conference today and showing off the entire team, and based on your statement that you're starting all over again?
No, we have not started all over again. There was a lot of quality investigative work that had been done. Nearly 10 months of work, 9 months of work that had been done. We took what had been done and we're moving forward. Our focus is what needs to be done from this point forward to get to a resolution of this case. That's our focus.
One of the things the FBI told those members that went to Washington was that you had not done enough to eliminate some viable suspects in the community. Since that trip, have you now eliminated any people?
Well, I don't know where that information came from, and so I'm not going to respond to that.
Yes, ma'am.
Commander, back to the timeline. Is there pressure being put on you to make an arrest since there is Darnell Hoffman has a lawsuit going against Alex Hunter? Is there pressure on you all as well?
From the Darnell Hoffman?
Or just to make an arrest, since that has even come up and brought to you the issue?
No, there's no pressure on us to make an arrest. Let me make this clear. What we want to do is a quality, thorough investigation, gather the evidence, gather the facts, and let them speak for themselves. The biggest mistake we could make is to rush this thing simply because the public wants to know, the media wants to know, and I understand that. I understand the frustration that's out there. I mean, look at the frustration that we're working the case. We want to solve it as well. I'm sure the family wants it to be solved. We're doing our best, but we're also going to be thorough and take it step by step.
Can you outline or give us a sense of how the Ramseys have been cooperative and helpful since you've taken over?
I can only talk about the time that I've been involved.
Right.
And thus far, we've made several requests, and they've honored those requests. We have several more pending, and we're still waiting to hear from them.
Can you give us a sense of what those requests were and how they were honored?
Pardon me?
Can you give us a sense of what those requests were?
No, I'm not going to get into that.
Steve?
Commander, you talk about improved relationships with the District Attorney's Office, and yet nobody from the District Attorney's Office is here today. Can we read anything into that, or should we not?
You can read anything you want into that. No, we are conducting the investigation. As you know, the case has been restructured. We are now doing the investigation. They are consulting with us. They are advising us. And the relationship, as far as I'm concerned and from my perspective, is just fine. And what I've been told, I was not on this case, 10 weeks ago. What I've been told is that the working relationship is much better. You would have to ask them directly what their perspective is, but I can tell you I've talked to Alex Hunter this week, I talked to Pete Hofstrom, and they have assured me that from their perspective, things are going very well.
Does that mean, just to follow up, does that mean that war room has been torn down and it's not in use anymore?
Well, we're not utilizing that. The District Attorney's Office still uses it.
Ross?
What would you hope to learn by re-interviewing the neighbors?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
What would you hope to learn by re-interviewing the neighbors, you said?
Well, in any investigation, regardless of the complexity, you oftentimes have follow-up questions. As you do investigation, more information becomes available. Sometimes when you do interviews, you don't have all the information. As you do investigation, you get more information that leads to other questions that you now need to go back and clarify or ask additional questions. And that's the reason for that. And there are some people we've interviewed 3 and 4 times because of follow-up questions that we've had. And that's just part of doing a quality investigation.
Mark, have you resubmitted items to CBI for examination? And also, outside that, earlier in the investigation, the Cellmark laboratories were utilized. Has anything new been sent to them or old been resent to them?
Well, what I want to avoid is getting into specifics about, what labs we've sent evidence to and those kinds of things. Let me just say we do have other forensic testing that needs to be done, and we are working on getting that accomplished.
Roger?
Since you've taken over this investigation, has anyone besides the police department, DA, outside lawyers who are offering help, anyone been given free access to your files, the complete file of this case?
Well, we don't have a complete file. This investigation is still ongoing. We are there.
Point, the file that you have so far, the 18,000 pages, has anyone been given access to that file besides police?
Besides police?
Yes, sir.
Again, I've worked closely with Pete Hofstrom, and evidence that has been developed of a material nature has been discussed with him. He is aware of that. He is aware of information that we have. As far as all of the paperwork, if that's what you're talking about, it's not all completed yet. So no, there is not a completed case file.
Carol?
You said you've been re-interviewing, you've been talking to people you'd already interviewed before, maybe some new people, maybe some new forensics. Would you still call this a circumstantial case?
Yes, it is. At this time, it's a circumstantial case.
Dan?
Before you came on board, the police department utilized the pro bono services of 3 outside attorneys, something that most people seem to think is unusual, if not unprecedented. Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with those attorneys and why you think their services are necessary?
The only thing I care to say about that is that they are assisting us in a consulting basis.
John?
Commander, it seems as though you're also trying to start a new relationship with the media. I mean, last time we were here, we got a lecture on the Constitution. You haven't said next question. You're taking the questions and answering them as directly as possible. Is it fair to say you're also trying to establish a new relationship with the media and with the American public?
I'm being myself. This is me. You either like it or you don't, but, I'm not Tom Colby, I'm not anybody else, and this is how I interact when I interact with the media.
Are we going to be seeing more of you? Does this mean that there'll be ongoing press briefings?
That's a possibility if we have information that we can release, if we have information that's significant that would be important to release, or updates on progress of the case. We don't want to call you all back here just to say the same thing over and over again. So if we have something that we can talk about, certainly we'd be willing to do that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Have you ever worked a homicide that has taken longer than a year, and how was it resolved?
Have I ever worked a homicide that has taken longer than a year?
Yes,
No.
and how was it resolved? You have not.
Yes, ma'am.
You talk a lot about re-interviewing neighbors. Can you say if all of the neighbors have been interviewed at least one time? Because as recently as a month ago, there were some neighbors who had been passed over because they were out of town.
That is one of the follow-up things that we have to do, is we have to go back and make sure that we have done that. And so that's part of the what we're looking at.
Bill?
We received a printout of investigation expenses. There were about $1,700 in travel expenses that were deleted that the city said would compromise the investigation if that was revealed. Can you give us some sense of what those trips or what those expenses were?
No, that's why they were deleted.
The 8 investigators all concentrating on the same area, the same focus as to who they believe might have killed JonBenet Ramsey?
No, as I stated again in the statement, we have a task list that we've identified of things that need to be done. That's 72 items. 28 of them have been completed. Each of these detectives have items that they are concentrating on and focusing on.
But surely they have a personal opinion. And, are you going one way or the other way?
In court, personal opinions don't matter. We have to gather the facts, get the evidence together, and really let the facts speak for themselves.
Vicki?
Commander Beckner, you've had a couple months now to study this case. Do you have any observations about the decisions that were made in the early hours of this investigation and how they may have affected a potential outcome here?
Let me tell you how I've approached this. I haven't gone back and tried to use hindsight and 20/20 vision and analyze why and how everything was done. 9 weeks ago, I came onto this case and I took what was on the plate. And my focus has been forward. Let's go forward. This is what we have today. How do we get to where we want to be tomorrow? And that's what I'm focusing on.
I'd like to go back to the question of who else is under that umbrella of suspicion, Commander. There have been reports about convicted sex offender in California, pedophiles, former sex offenders in the Boulder area being questioned. Are you continuing to speak to people like that, interview people like that? Do you have other potential suspects among that group of people?
I'm not going to specify who we are looking at and who we are not looking at. We do look at different people.
There has been, Commander, an ongoing concern from the beginning that somehow, through either the police department or through the DA's office, that the Ramsey family and their attorneys were getting far too much information about the inside of this case, considering that they are potential suspects in the thing. Is that a concern at this point? Have you taken any steps to stem that flow of information, if indeed it ever existed?
That has not been a concern of mine at this time. Again, I'm focusing at, this is where we are today. This is the information we have. How do we get to solving this case? What do we need to do? This is what's on our plate. Where do we go from here? That's my focus, and that's where it's going to remain.
Yes, sir?
Commander, if you are checking on outside suspects, does that mean you cannot exclude the possibility of an uninvited intruder into the home?
Again, you're getting into some details of the investigation that I'm just not comfortable talking about right now.
We'll take one more question. Kevin?
Mark, can you probably won't tell us specifically, but of these 72 tasks, what in general do they involve besides re-interviewing people? Are there any other?
Generally, a lot of them involve evidentiary items, follow-up in those areas. A lot of it involves additional interviewing and those kinds of things.
Thank you. That's all the time we have for today. Jennifer
very
and
much.
Ann have copies of the handouts. And
He's ready.